In part one of my coverage of the Pamela Moss case, I left off talking about the thousands of leads investigators were chasing down. So let's pick back up there and get into where the break in the case ultimately happened. One thing police wondered was if there was a connection between Pamela's case and a 2-month-old case out of the city of Rochester. On July 16, 1962, at around 4:30 p.m., a 9-year-old girl had been SA'd in a wooded area behind a playground at Cobbs Hill Park, a popular urban park several miles away in the city of Rochester. That victim survived and was able to work with a police sketch artist, and she shared that this man had distinctive forehead lines, a long, slender face, and was thin, and probably in his early to mid-30s. About a week after Pamela's murder, this crime and the sketch came back out to the media, and that is when a church custodian came forward with an odd sighting the day after Pamela went missing. And not just any church. This was St. Joseph's Church, around the corner from Pamela's house, the very church Pamela and her family attended. The custodian stated that on Friday morning at around 10:15 a.m., before the general public knew that Pamela was missing, he, being the custodian, was walking from the church to the rectory when he spotted a man who seemed confused, as if he didn't know which was the church and which was the rectory. He also just noticed the horizontal lines on the man's forehead. Again, not yet connecting them to anything else, just noticing they were a prominent feature of the man's. When the custodian returned to the church, he saw the man again in a pew praying. He said he went to do his vacuuming, and soon after the man left. He didn't think of it again until he saw the sketch of the Cobbs Hill Park suspect in connection to Pamela Moss's case, and he said it was a dead ringer, and he reported it to the authorities. Priests at the church used this to encourage the killer to come forward and offered that they would go as a go-between and assist the person to safely turn themselves in. On Sunday the 16th, a 23-year-old man from the nearby town of Irondequoit was picked up because he had been seen driving around Sawmill Drive for several days and nights in a row recently, seemingly for no reason and sometimes with his headlights off. He had a juvenile record for SA years prior, and he had no explanation for why he was in the neighborhood. Found in his car was a knife and crude reading material. Still, after a polygraph exam and questioning, they felt he was definitely off, but not likely a suspect in the case. Meanwhile, police were checking attendance records looking for students now frequently absent or tardy, thinking that if a student did do it, they would be having possible psychological or physical effects. They were also looking through yearbooks at Penfield and nearby schools, likely looking for someone who matched the Cobbs Hill composite. They were having conversations with 75 sex offenders in the area, and by day 11 they had questioned 2,000 people. Then, 2 weeks to the day that Pamela disappeared, her killer was arrested. 28-year-old landscaper James Robert Moore. Father of 3 with another baby on the way, Moore had been working at a landscaping project at the neighbor of Pamela Moss on the day she went missing. He was even questioned the next day as part of the canvass, but his appearance and demeanor didn't raise any red flags. In a strange coincidence, both the Moss family and James Robert Moore had moved to the Rochester area from Buffalo in recent years. And it was a former police detective in Buffalo who would lead to the break. When he read about Pamela's murder in the paper, he thought of the similarities to a crime he investigated, the SA of 2 teenage girls in the Buffalo area just a couple of years prior. He clipped the article, brought it to his former police station, who then contacted the state police, who then got in touch with authorities in Monroe County. In 1962, Moore had his indefinite probation terminated by Buffalo area authorities after he was convicted in the 1960 SA of the 2 teens. He had been charged with third-degree assault and was given a 60-day suspended sentence and sent to a Buffalo psychiatric hospital. A condition of his probation was he had to meet with a psychiatrist, which he did, and the conditions were considered met, so that was that. Upon being brought in for questioning in the Moss case, he readily confessed not only to her murder, but the Cobbs Hill case. In part 3, I'll get into not only James Moore's confession, but everything that came after, so go check it out.